Should probably change that.
Welcome. Get comfortable and prepare yourself for an enjoyable evening with us.
Cue this up. Make sure it starts right at the beginning.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. Our program will begin in another minute.
Yeah.
Elizabeth?
Yeah, we'll give folks a few more minutes to join us. Or a few more moments, I should say. Okay, well, I will go ahead and start with introductions. And thank you all for joining us for tonight's programs. My name is Elizabeth Rudrud, and I am the Programs and Outreach Director for the Southwest Seattle Historical Society. And as always, it's a pleasure to welcome you to this evening's Words, Writers, and Southwest Stories program. This program is a monthly free speaker series that brings local authors, historians, and voices to our community in order to foster deeper understanding of our community and its people. This program is supported by Humanities Washington, For Culture, Seattle Office of Arts and Culture, and all of our other sponsors and donors. If you'd like to learn more about the Southwest Seattle Historical Society and its programs, you can visit us at loghousemuseum.org. And for tonight's program, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to submit your questions during the presentation, and our speaker will be able to answer these questions either during the program or at the end of the program. I don't know if we decided that tonight, if we were going to take questions as they come up or save it for a Q&A at the end, which we will always leave time at the end of the program for your questions. So with that, I'm going to pass it along to Dora Faye Henricks, who is the chair of Words, Writers, Southwest Stories.
Good evening again. It's good to see you all. I wish I could, but you're going to enjoy the program tonight. I think you all know BJ Bullert, or if you don't, you're going to meet her tonight. BJ is a Southwest Seattle Historical Society member, historian, author, and documentary filmmaker. She taught communication at American University, Muhlenberg College, and the University of Washington. Muhlenberg, probably. She has served as a research fellow at the Joan Shorenstein Center on the Press, Politics, and Public Policy at Harvard University, where she studied the integral role of public relations professionals in shaping the sweatshop awareness movement. At Oxford, she studied the history of ideas and wrote a thesis about Adam Smith and the Unenlightened. Bullert will discuss her work as a documentarian of local history, including the life of composer Earl Robinson, subject of a recent Desmond Hansen's mural near the West Seattle High School, where Robinson went to school. BJ attended elementary school and high school in West Seattle as well, and currently resides here with her husband. She has maintained an ongoing career as a documentary filmmaker since the 80s. Her company, Seattle Films Hidden Histories LLC, is dedicated to producing works about the Pacific Northwest. We are fortunate to have BJ present to us tonight. She's one of us and will be showing videos and discussing a number of local subjects of interest to all of us. BJ, it's all yours.
Oh, thank you, Dora. I'm honored to be here, and as a West Seattle, somebody who grew up here, I have a special place in my heart for the Southwest Seattle Historical Society. I'm also somebody who I recently retired as a core faculty member from Antioch University, so I have the joy and the liberation of of discovering retirement as a place where I can really continue to do what I see as being kind of my life's work, which is sort of trying to tell history, trying to find the stories that kind of capture the lived reality of people of this place. So anyway, I wanted to start off with something that is one of the earlier films that I made, and it's called Earl Robinson, Ballad of an American. Now, Earl Robinson, as as Dorothea mentioned, was a West Seattle person. He was a composer who grew up, went to West Seattle High School. He lived on 41st and Manning when he returned to Seattle after a very interesting career as both a composer and an activist. So I wanted to just share with you, just the opening for this film, because it was made possible. It was the original 501c3 was the Historical Society. A number of the people, the organizations actually that are sponsoring this speaking series, funded helped provide some of the seed funding for the film. Humanities Washington, For Culture, and so forth. Anyway, let me see if I can share this little clip, because like like many people who are from our community, you may recognize the result of their work, but you may not always understand who they are. So this is an attempt. Let me see if I can make this go. Here we go. And let me know if it's too loud. How come it's not going?
Dreamed I saw Joe here last night, alive as you and me. He says, "I, but you're 10 years dead. I never died," says he. I never died.
It turns by day and then by night. A child is black, a child is white. Together they grow to see the light. We see the light.
There are folks all through this country who, when asked what's their favorite songs, will end up naming some of Earl's songs.
What is America to me? A name, a map, or a flag I see. A certain word, democracy.
It doesn't matter to me that they don't know the name of the composer, as long as the song's being sung.
Sing it out for friendship, sing it out for justice, sing it out for love. That's the true America.
What's happening? Yes, I did stop it here.
No, Robin.
Okay, there we go. So that was the opening to the Earl Robinson Ballad of an American film. And I'd like to tell you a little bit of the backstory for it, because it is kind of a West Seattle story. Earl Robinson, grew up here. He, as I mentioned before, he went to West Seattle High School. He was of the same generation as Ivor. In fact, Ivor Hagelin, and he and a group called the Blue Notes or Blue Knights, I think they were called, used to get together and they used to make music. And Earl then later, his dad worked for Sears, and he was supposed to go to Sears and be after high school and get a job and get a business degree. And he learned, like many of us, that sometimes that shoe doesn't fit. So the film looks at not just Earl's journey, but the journey where he learns to become and discover himself as a musician, his gifts at harmony and and composition. But it also tells a story of the social movements that he was engaged with throughout his life, starting with the labor movement. And he was a member of the Communist Party early on, before it became brutally clear that Stalin was a fascist dictator. But the thing that was so remarkable to me about Earl was that he was always engaged with whatever the moment, the seemingly progressive social movements were of his day, and he had this ability to collaborate with others to turn it all into music. So the songs you saw, Joe Hill, which became a ballad of the labor movement, Black and White, which was a song that was about desegregation of the schools. I mean, I didn't know that Earl had composed that music. Frank Sinatra made The House I Live In a song that was sung very widely as a highly patriotic song across the political spectrum. And that's one of the things that music has the ability to do. It has this ability to cross audiences, to can everybody hear my audio okay? I hope so. Anyway, if it's not loud enough, let me know. Maybe I'll try to turn this up. Anyway, so I ended up deciding to make this story about Earl because I was just starting my doctoral studies at the University of Washington. And for those of you who are in the academic world, know that sometimes it can be very dull and very grueling, and not as, for me anyway, as a creative person, I really had to keep alive the creative part of my life, which was the part of me that likes to tell stories and kind of make social change through media, essentially. So I ended up finding out, I read the West Seattle Herald, and Earl had come back to West Seattle. So I met him at the B&O Cafe, which used to be across the street from where the current Admiral Theater is. And, you know, he started telling me about his life. And not only was he this balladeer of the labor movement, but he was also a highly spiritual person who had fully embraced a new age lifestyle and orientation, which manifested itself in music. So I thought, this is a good story, because not only is he local and he's from here and he lived down the street from me, but he also had this ability to express in music some of the deeper felt concerns of the society that oftentimes don't get fully expressed. So anyway, I had a great time making Earl Robinson, and I was thrilled because it was Clay Eels, who was the president of the Historical Society at the time, who, you know, was a supporter, and through kind of this, you know, having the society as a nonprofit sponsor helped me move ahead with that film. So a lot of my work is really about the sense of place. And it's not just the sense of any place, it's a sense of this place. It's a sense of West Seattle, of the sense of rootedness that I have here. And I gained that sense of rootedness because when I was younger, my dad took a job overseas, and so I was lifted out of my kind of comfortable world on Walnut Avenue and lived in Pakistan for a short while. And it opened my eyes to how sheltered I had been. And so I was able to sort of see, it just totally changed my vision of, you know, not everybody lives like, you know, the people on my street in West Seattle. There are different cultures, and there's a richness to that. And there's so much, you know, assumptions that, you know, I just grew up making, you know, I had growing up, that are kind of place specific, but somewhat limited and narrow. And so having exposure and living abroad sort of really sort of shook up my worldview, my Weltanschauung. Anyway, so coming back to West Seattle, I've always come back to West Seattle. When I was teaching on the East Coast, I was so lucky to have an apartment where I could crash, and stay when I was in town. And while I was even back east, I was still making films that were about Seattle, and particularly about West Seattle. So I'd like to share a little bit of that with you. Another film I made that was created in conjunction with the opening of the Log House Museum. It was called Alki, Birthplace of Seattle, and I'll show you a little clip of that. And I've got to figure out how to do this share thing. And let's see, here it is. Take a look.
This country began with a strong commitment to the settling of land.
When the Denny Party landed and when the white settlers first came to this area, everything changed.
This sense of unknowing pervades the experience there. No one knew really what was going on. They were hopeful and fearful at the same time.
So that was the opening to the Alki, Birthplace of Seattle film. And I wanted to, I've got to stop sharing now, I think. That was the first time the story of the pioneers was told side by side with the Duwamish, the first people of this area. And it took the real vision of people who were at the Historical Society to really kind of lean into that. So, working with Arlene Wade and other members of the Historical Society at the time, I was able to at least present a document, a short film that tried not to gloss over some of the ugliness of that colonial encounter, but also at the same time to be truthful about the perspective of the pioneer, the landing party, the American settlers who came in. And that film was released. It was broadcast on Channel 9, and it's available, wherever it's for free. You can watch it on my Vimeo page. I've never made a dime off my movies, so I'm giving them to the world. But that film is available, and it's used in schools to educate about the specific history of this place. There's another film I made after that, which was about Chief Seattle. And this again was a film that was created to coincide with the Spirit Returns exhibit, the first one in 2001. And this exhibit was designed to mark the sesquicentennial of the city. And it's a kind of an interesting film because, again, it was an attempt to dive deeper into this place and the figure that is associated with Seattle, including the mythologies about him. I should say at the beginning, I had actually invited the Suquamish tribe to participate in this, and I was told basically no, they didn't want to have anything to do with it because of, you know, the tribal rivalry at that time, which sadly continues today. So let me see if I can share this with you.
There are stories about him from Snoqualmie to northern Puget Sound to southern Puget Sound. And a lot of it is obviously a mystery. Nobody can really tell us exactly what he did or where he lived.
What we know about Seattle was that he was one aggressive, pugnacious individual, frankly, a scary person.
I believe that in good conscience that he was doing the best for his people.
Seattle, the man, became a symbol of the cooperation between Indians and non-Indians that allowed civilization to flourish in the Puget Sound.
The speech is so renowned. I mean, it's world famous.
I think you have to look at Chief Seattle's speech as an interesting piece of white literature.
There are stories.
So that's that was just the opening from that was just the opening to the Chief Seattle film. And like with any figure, there's controversy. And the goal of the film was to use as many authentic, documented examples of scenes from his life, and to unpack it in a way that would be intelligible to a general audience. And the music, by the way, was by James Rasmussen, who is a composer, and at that time was, and well, actually he still is on the Duwamish Tribal Council. So I'd be totally happy to talk more about that film and the, just the process of making it. I should say, though, at one point I had a little hesitancy because I was thinking, hey, I'm a white kid from West Seattle. I grew up on Walnut, I'm, lower middle class, and I have had the gift of a good education. But I thought part of me was thinking, well, who am I to be telling this story? So I had a conversation with Vi Hilbert, who is perhaps the most important most important person to revive the Lushootseed language. And I was talking with her, and she just basically said, go for it. No, the story hasn't been told. You need to tell it. And I took that as a indication that I should just keep on going and I should do the film. So that the film is still being used. I understand the UW uses it in some of their classes. Of course, looking back, I can see, well, I should have done this a little, and wouldn't it have been nice if I had better cameras, but they didn't have better cameras back then. So, there is this issue of the technology. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about, I have, well, before I leave this topic, I have done a number of other shorter films that are exploring the sense of place, this place, from the perspective of geology, historical record, maps, and the oral histories of Duwamish people who made the decisions not necessarily to go to the reservations. It's quite important that the Historical Society put on this Spirit Returns 2 exhibit, because in it, there were new papers discovered that by Doc Maynard, who was the Indian agent, I think, at the time, during the post-treaty time, and during the treaty time. So, he wrote in these firsthand accounts of how there were these Duwamish people who went over to Suquamish the way they were supposed to and couldn't survive and came back to their traditional fishing grounds and areas, their village sites. Of course, the last longhouse was burned down in West Seattle in 1893, and that was right near where the current Duwamish Longhouse and Cultural Center is. So, it's really interesting when you start digging deep into the history and trying to tell these kind of stories, which are kind of against the dominant narrative of that someone would like us to believe that, like, the Duwamish are extinct, which they're not. Anyway, here we go. I wanted to also, now I'm getting back to the switching of gears. I've done a number of films around the sense of place at Fisherman's Terminal. In fact, the main character in my Fisherman's films is Pete Knutson of Loki Fish Company, because he was the person who raised the alarm when the Port of Seattle originally intended to introduce yacht moorage in what was a traditionally very working class environment. And while the yacht versus fishing is itself kind of, a false narrative, the story of the community coming together and the struggles about it really became great fodder for looking at how change can happen and how people can effectively impact their environment. So my first film premiered at SIF, and it was about that struggle, the struggle of the fishermen. And then 10 years later, I made a follow-up. And I'm just going to show you the opening for the Fisherman's Terminal films, because the Fisherman's Terminal sequel film has basically a lot of the same material. Besides, it looks a little bit better. So I'm going to try to share that screen with you now. I hope everybody can hear okay. Okay, where's Fisherman's? Here we go.
Fisherman's Terminal is our home. And they don't understand that this is a home for a whole bunch of people down here. And they cannot take this away and give it to some guy who's going to park his yacht over here and drink martinis. Fuck that.
On this little sign here, it says, yachts don't feed people. That's true, they don't. Yachts feed ego. We don't need that down there. We're fishermen, let's keep it for fishermen. Fishermen only.
Well, what you hear is this kind of oil and vinegar. They're asking us to let those leisurely rich people mix with those who are really working.
I would say that's a mischaracterization. We're trying to enhance revenue so we can support the fishing fleet.
This is a home today for 1,000 fishermen and thousands of workers. And if the port puts yachts into the home port of the North Pacific Fleet, you are declaring war on the working class of Seattle. And to be totally honest, we will fight you. We will fight you at the zoning level, we will fight you in the mayor's office, we'll fight you at the city council, and we'll fight you in front of the voters.
We can find a way to have fishing people here and fishing people bump pleasure boats.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Resolution 3480 passes.
So that just gives you a taste of the fisherman's the fisherman's films. Right now, I'm wrapping up what I think is the last. It's basically a trilogy now when you think of it. It's a look at Pete Knudsen and Loki Fish Company, the challenge of the small boat guys, in Pete's case, to survive in a new economy. And this film is called Loki Pete, which is almost, my editor is putting the final touches on it. But I'd like to just share with you a tiny glimpse of it, if I can make this work. And I hope this isn't too overwhelming for you, or feel like a fire hose or something, like there's too much coming. Let's see, did I remember? Did I get it? Did I get it? Maybe. This may be an error. Okay, I may have to pass on that one, but I'd be happy at some point to share Loki Pete with you. I think I somehow maybe messed that one up. Okay, great. There's some other things about West Seattle that are really unique, which is that West Seattle has a lot of stories of, I don't want to say exactly eccentrics, but creative people who do different things that later become discovered as either groundbreaking or very odd. For example, you may know that Gypsy Rose Lee, she was born here in West Seattle on Frontenac, and of course became, this famous person who didn't have a lot of clothes on, and had a problematic role in history. But there's another one which is another person who's much less known, but I think is equally worthy of having a film made about her. And that's the story of Eva Falk Furpo. I haven't started this film. I may not ever make this film. I just got overwhelmed by the prospect of trying to fundraise and do all this stuff. But I did want to share with you that I have a little film I made for the, here it is. This is the one I want to share. Oops, sorry. I did make a short little film that again intersects with the Historical Society, because it's a film about the stone cottage. Here we go. Let me see if I can do the share right now. I think this is it. Oh dear. I'm pretty sure it's here. Here we go.
The great thing about this house is you ask anybody who's ever driven down Alki Avenue or gone to Alki Beach and said the stone cottage, and they know exactly what you're talking about. The wrecking balls are coming, the clock is ticking, and we need to get it off this property.
We got into this project because John Bennett reached out to us and told us about this brilliant idea about saving the stone house. And as a developer, of course, we want to do what we can to save the history of the city. So we worked out a plan, and here we are.
There's a lot of history in this building. I mean, more than just you see on the surface.
Even the rocks retain the memory of the Duwamish people. And so because these rocks came from right across the street over here off the beach, that was my original interest in the house. Here we are today in 2020, preserving this thing. It's a good day. It's a slob.
that was a really fun piece to make. And, thanks to John Bennett and Deb Barker and all those who were involved, and Mike O'Shaughnessy, because, they saw the importance of saving this piece of history. But the occupant, the woman who built it, was a real character. She was, a dancer, I guess, kind of an acrobatic dancer. She had a couple of marriages. She was arrested for posing naked in Schmitz Park, and then going into court dressed rather flamboyantly and kind of egging on. Can people hear me? Somehow okay. And just doing some kind of unusual things. So I was thinking, God, she'd be a good character to make a film about. And that's because this place is rich in histories. It's rich in the histories of the people who've made it their home. So I'm gonna then now, let's see, it's 6:37. I want to switch gears again. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions if you want to ask questions about method or process or whatever. Let me know, there'll be plenty of time to do that. But for now, I want to return to a bit of where we came from, which is show you something else that happened over time. I'm actually not liking that sun there, so I'm going to try to, God, you're seeing more of my mess, but that's okay. Let's see, I was going to say, oh yeah, I want to share this because I ended up, having made these films. I mean, Earl Robinson was born in 1910 and he died in 1991. Ended up finishing the film in 94. But his life spanned a major chunk of American history, a major span of American history. And it was also bookended by West Seattle. So when I went to the West Seattle, the Southwest Seattle Historical Society Gala down at Salty's this last time, I was absolutely thrilled that that Desmond Hansen had put up a bid for a signal box drawing. And I couldn't think of anything better than to continually reach in and say, it kept going higher and higher and higher and higher. And, I wasn't planning on it, but I did it. And I thought, what a great way to remember Earl Robinson. And, to also just this idea of using public spaces like signal boxes as places for memory and places for intervention, so that when you're driving around town, you might suddenly run into an image you don't understand or a face that you're curious about, and you can find out more about them. I just thought it was a great idea. And so because Earl Robinson grew up in this neighborhood, I grew up in the neighborhood. Earl used to walk these streets around St. John's. Again, he lived on 41st and Manning. And so I thought, wouldn't it be great? Let's do it. So this is a little video I put together kind of to honor Earl, but also just because I felt like it was the thing to do. I needed to do it, and I'm grateful to the Historical Society for providing an opportunity to tell this story. By the way, you'll be hearing Earl's voice, and that's the message.
Think of me, and I'll be present, together with you, never apart. Send me love, be available, saving myself, just for you. For my soul is unassailable. I'll be in your mind and heart. It's just a change of address. That is all. That's all. There's no death. Just change my address. I live on. I live on. We live on. We live on. We live on. We live on.
So that's kind of a personal tribute to Earl, but also it's intended to be a marker to invite fellow West Seattleites and anybody passing through to stop and maybe ask who was this guy, and maybe inquire further. So for me, there's a saying, there's a phrase that kept going through my head, which is that history lives in the stories we tell about the past. I'm kind of paraphrasing this. I had an interview. I did a pre-interview for a current project with the historian Cole Thrush, who teaches up at UBC. And that saying keeps going through my mind in my work these days, that history lives in the stories we tell about the past. And that is also an area that can be very contentious when you have different groups wanting to, or different interests wanting to shape histories. So for me, the joy and the challenge in this kind of documentary work is to be unflinching about the tensions, to be able to at least characterize them, and to also have a moral compass about justice and what's right. So with that, I'd kind of like to wrap it up. And Dora Faye, or does anybody have any questions?
BJ, there's a question about how you start filming. As you're telling the story, what do you typically start filming first, and why?
It depends on the project. It really depends. For me, usually, I mean, like with the Fisherman's Film, it was a grab and go kind of thing. This event was happening. The protests were happening. I had to be there, and I just had to capture it. I didn't know for sure that it would end up being a film, and I'm going to try to stand up so I don't have all this light. But yeah, I usually try to. It really depends on the story. Like right now, you know, I'm finishing the Loki Pete film, and that has, you know, wasn't sure that it was going to end up being a film essentially about aging and change over time, but it's become that. So it's you know, it's like making film. It's like playing three-dimensional chess, and there's an open-endedness. You don't always know where things are going to lead. I'm not sure that answers the question, though, because there's no one answer to when you start shooting or what.
Thank you, BJ. That was from Deb Parker, and she says hi.
Hi. Hi, Deb. Love the Stone Cottage.
Judy Bentley, another question, wants to know, how did you develop documentary skills, and why did you choose this method of telling history?
It goes back to being at Oxford. And when I was at Oxford doing my studies in 18th century Scottish philosophy and change. Hey, Ken, can you turn on the light? It's looking kind of grim in here. You know, I noticed that there were these anthropologists that I was sharing a house with, and they were having a lot more fun than I was. I mean, I was in the Bodleian doing archival work all the time. And they were like flying out to different places. And then they ended up making films or taking photographs or something like that. So when I came back to the States after being in England, I was going to write a book about the religious right. And I ended up not having any money, not having a job, really stretching things thin. And I ended up back in Seattle. And that was when the cannery murders happened, the murders of Domingo Viernes, and who were Local 37 cannery workers who were killed by, presumably, and there's evidence to support it, the Marcos regime. And when that happened, it sort of, shook me up a little bit. And I thought, that's a story. And how can you tell a story? And I ended up drifting into film because I pitched a story to King TV, and then they paired me with somebody who had experience, and I just sort of got the bug. Then I started working, I just dove right in. In terms of my formal education in filmmaking, I took like 2 community college classes out of Bellevue Community College, but I mostly learned by doing. And I made a couple of films with John DeGraff, who's an absolutely stellar and brilliant documentary filmmaker, very amazing in terms of, talk about productive. I did a film with him called God and Money, about the Catholic bishop's critique of American capitalism, and then Circle of Plenty, about biointensive agriculture. But so I just learned by doing. And then I tried to do another film on my own about midwifery. This was at a time when, the medical community was not very sympathetic or open to it. This was in the 1980s. And I worked for a year, thought I had some money, couldn't get funding from anybody. And I decided to go back and do a PhD in how difficult it is for independent filmmakers to make a living with their craft, and what does that say about our society? But not just about the society, but about power and control, and whose voices get to have expression and whose don't. So,
BJ, a couple of other questions coming in related to what you were just now saying. Someone's asking, how do you know when the film is finished, as you were coming from what you said a minute ago?
That's a really good thing, because it basically gets to the point where I'm worn out. And I'm pretty worn out on the Loki Pete film, because I've been working on it for the archival footage goes back a long, long ways. Goes back 25 years. But I feel like it gets to, when you're working with a good editor, I am really grateful that I've worked with my current editor is Eric Duggar, and he's phenomenal. The editor really helps me figure out when it's done, but a lot of it does have to do with the kind of emotional exhaustion. It's I don't know. Ask any author, when is their book done? Sometimes there's just the deadline, like Judy Bentley. You've written books. How do you know when they're done?
And thank you. Sally writes, I don't have a question, but wanted to say that I am fascinated to watch your films. She and one other person asked if there's a site where someone can watch them all. Karen Nelson earlier said, will the Historical Society maybe arrange a series, but maybe we could talk about that, where we could watch all of them in their entirety. I don't know about all of them, but whatever you would recommend. Sally is a recent 6 years. She's only been here in West Seattle 6 years, and that's what she's interested in. So what do you think?
I think it's a great idea, but you know what? there were a lot of documentary filmmakers in West Seattle. And I mean, I had this fantasy that there be a West Seattle Film Festival of just showcasing West Seattle filmmakers at the Admiral Theater. I thought, wow,
Good.
that'd be cool. I mean, I know my friend Kay Ray, who's finishing a film about, the Beaver Detective. You know, there's my friend, Patricia Boyko, who is an incredible filmmaker, who lives in this area. And there's a whole bunch of us. And I love the idea of us helping to kind of create a space. I mean, I look back at some of my earlier films and I shudder because I think, oh shit, why didn't I do that differently? Or I should have hired a narrator. Why did I narrate that myself? I did it because I didn't have any money, you know. But I think it would be wonderful to have an invitation to local West Seattleites, to have a show and tell. And I
We'll
did
have to look into that. Good idea.
I
Sally goes on to say that Historical Society has aided her to feel a new sense of home here that she's never expected. She's lived most of her life on the Kitsap Peninsula, and so she likes your presentation of West Seattle. Janet wants to know how long it takes to make a film.
Forever. I mean, it depends. I mean, the Earl Robinson film took basically 5 years. It was over 5 years, and a lot of that time is spent writing grants. I only got the finishing funds for that film after Earl died. I mean, he died on July 20th, 1991, on Admiral Way, kind of the intersection of Admiral and Manning, I think it was. It was on Manning Street somewhere, but it was after that the National Endowment for the Humanities, it was the National Endowment for the Arts cultural programming came through, and Joan Baez agreed to be interviewed.
Wow.
She had kind of not wanted to do it because I was just some kind of local yokel, I guess. But I'm grateful, and she did it, and it was good.
Thank you. We've got 2 more questions coming in, I think. Morgan Community Association, I think that might be Deb Barker, says regarding the Stone Cottage, they're going to have an announcement out to the West Seattle blog tomorrow, Friday the 13th. That sounds kind of ominous.
I can't wait to hear what's going on there.
I know. And Sally said, yes, please, about the ideas you were talking about what to do. 2 more questions outside of what you just said. Judy Bentley's asking, do you see West Seattle nurturing eccentric people? Nurturing?
I don't know if it's a nurture or if it's just the way we look at things. I don't know, but you think of Francis Farmer, who was I mean, there are outliers here in West Seattle, people who I was just tempted to say it's not like Bellevue, but I should get in trouble for saying that because they're eccentrics everywhere. It's just a question of who gets to be seen and heard, I guess.
Yeah.
But it would be kind of interesting. I mean, you have the guy who built remember the rock garden?
Yeah.
The Boeing engineer guy who built that thing and unfortunately got taken down.
Huh. Let us prepare to close if we can with a different subject, but interesting question. Can you, Pat Boyko says, can you talk about the quote that Chief Seattle's famous speech was a piece of white literature? Did Chief Seattle really make that speech? Is it the translation or writing of his words that are not accurate?
That part of the film in the Chief Seattle film is meant to hold the tension between the different interpretations and the historical record. I ended up going back to Vi Hilbert. So at the very end of the film, we take that and reconstruct it. based on a descendant, a woman who apparently, her name is Amelia Sneetlam, who was there. So, I mean, I would be happy to, play that section of the Chief Seattle film if you want, because it's at the end. But the fact using Jonathan Rabin in the film, to me was a choice because he's a Brit, was a Brit. He's passed away. He is a literary figure and very well known in his area. He had studied Seattle as an outsider. And I think he brought something to the film that makes people question. I mean, Alexandra Harmon, Professor Harmon of the University of Washington. I mean, she speaks in the film about how the speech it couldn't be accurate the way Henry Smith wrote it. So there are aspects of the Chief Seattle speech that elicit different reactions depending on where you are. And James Rasmussen in the film, talks about that. If you'd like, I could pull it up so you could see the multiple perspectives. But I like to be able to wrestle with. Yeah.
I would encourage you to do that if at least part of it. But in the meantime, people are thanking you. Sally says, thank you for sharing your journey. I love that. Judy Bentley reminds us that her emphasis in her question was on West Seattle still. Encouraging, nurture.
Eccentric. Well, maybe.
Yes, still. I missed you now. And Marcy Johnson says, thank you for this wonderful presentation, BJ. Yes, to West Seattle Film Festival. So you'll be hearing more about that, and I'll help work on it too. I hope Elizabeth's still listening.
Sounds like it'd be really fun.
It would be. Well, thank you. It's been fun of this presentation. Elizabeth, are you there? Can we run part of the... Oh, there was one question. Maybe, did I ask it? They want to know where someone can see, I mean, short of a series that we focus on you.
Oh,
but
they can...
your website, or where can we find all of them if we want
to... it's on all of them are available on my Vimeo page. And are you there? Somehow I clicked the button and, whatever. But they're on my Vimeo page, which I can give you. And I can actually pull it up so you can see it. And I could do one of my screen share things now that I have the ability to do that, thanks to you all. Okay, here's my, where'd it go? I'm not seeing it on my, I'm wanting it to be right here. Oh gee, it's Vimeo. It's sorry, it's on Vimeo. I can put it in the chat. Maybe that would be the easier way to do it.
Okay, and there's Elizabeth saying, thank you. Yeah, I guess you can read it. She'll be sure to send out a direct link to the Vimeo page. Elizabeth will do that for us.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah, that's great. So we thank you again, BJ, and thank you, audience, for being here and sharing our history as videotaped by BJ. And it's been a delight to hear you and learn more of your work. So good night.
Okay,
yeah. I'm thinking, are you going to put up that last video a little bit?
Oh, you mean I have
Seattle thing.
Oh, did you want to see that?
I don't know. I do. Somebody else might. But Elizabeth, we need to close it at 7 o'clock
Yeah, well, it's 7 o'clock now, so I can certainly give
Is
you.
that on your Vimeo page?
Yeah, it is. Chief
Oh,
Seattle,
okay.
the Alki film, the Earl Robinson film, they're all viewable
Yes.
on the Vimeo page.
All right, good.
Okay.
Well, thank you for being here and alerting us to these. So all of you express interest to whoever you can about this kind of a series, not only of BJ's, but some of her cohorts. We'll see you again, obviously.
Okay.
Thank you again, and good night,
Thank you very much. It
everybody.
was a lot of fun.
Yes, it was for us too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good night.